On episode 223 of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, whoops, how do I get back on track? This is a listener question. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/223. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. I wanted to take just a moment to thank you for tuning in to listen to this. I really do appreciate it. It's such an important part of my life that I have you out there that I'm working with and trying to help. And the feedback I get from you is awesome. I do have a couple of announcements, though. We were recently made it as high as number 13 on iTunes in the health and fitness category, which is a subcategory of health. And actually on the iPhone app, we made it as high as number 35 in all of health. So I wanted to thank you for being a part of the podcast. And the way this happens is it's based on our downloads, it's based on our growth, and it's also based on our reviews. So if you would do me a big, big favor, I'd really appreciate it. If you would go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review. Again, that's 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review. That's going to take you to the iTunes page, which will allow you to see the ratings and reviews and allow you to do a rating and review through either the iTunes app or through your iPhone. So if you'd go to that page, 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review, or if you're actually using the iPhone app, you'll see 3 little dots on the side beside this episode that you're listening to. If you push those dots, that will allow you to do a lot of things like share the episode with friends through Facebook or whatnot, and also rate and review the show. So all of that really does help Apple know that we're doing a good thing here and that you're enjoying this. So if you would go give us a rating review, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. So Donna is one of the listeners on this, and she sent a question in about how do you get back on track after a slip up? And I think this is a very, very important topic because, we're not perfect. We're human. And as a result, it's going to happen from time to time that we're going to have a bad day, bad week, bad month, maybe even a couple bad years if we let it happen. So getting back on track is extremely important if we want to maintain our health and fitness, because we've worked and come so far at this point. Even if you've only done a few little changes to your life, you've done some tremendous things for your life. And I don't want you to diminish that just because you've had a bad day, bad week, or whatnot. It's time for you to get back on track. So I want to give you a couple tools today that you can use when you find yourself in that situation. And then what you can do is you can bookmark this podcast episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/223. And when you find yourself in a pickle, you can always come back to this episode and review it again. But the way I like to look at this, you have to build a paradigm around yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Now, the things that happened yesterday or happened before this moment, even if they were earlier today, I guess, you really can't fix those. They just are what they are. So, we have to move on. We have to do something if we're going to change our behavior. And then there's the today faction of this, which is where we are right now in this moment, what we need to do at this particular moment to move on, to start ourselves on a different health trajectory. And then there's tomorrow. Now, people will say, you're not promised tomorrow, but the reality is we all have to kind of approach each day as if there is a tomorrow. That's why we're doing this. Otherwise, yes, we would eat all the ice cream in sight. We would eat all the chocolate in sight, and we wouldn't give a crap if we didn't believe there was going to be a tomorrow. So in the yesterday, today, tomorrow paradigm, there really are kind of 3 phases to this whole process of moving on. And I want to go through each of those carefully with you here so you can kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about, how to kind of maneuver through each of these stages. Because when you first go through this process of realizing that you've slipped, you end up in a cycle where you're kind of stuck in yesterday. You're angry at yourself, you're frustrated. And so being in yesterday is definitely not the way we're going to move on. So we've got to get out of yesterday. The first thing you need to do to get out of yesterday is you need to own it. you need to realize that you made the decisions that led to the actions that did what you did, and you have to own it. Not be ashamed of it, not say you're going to cover it up, not pretend it didn't happen. It happened, and it happened for a reason. So go ahead and own it, okay? And as a function of owning it, you really need to get down to the things that made this happen and kind of get to a little bit of kind of the, I would say, root cause. But we'll get into root cause later, because you just don't want to spend a lot of time ruminating about this event. You want to know it happened, and you want to own it, and now you want to go ahead and cut it off. So the next piece of this is forgive. Now, when someone does something wrong to you, you're very likely to have a moment or longer of anger. And that's also typically what we feel toward ourselves. Anger is one of the feelings. A lot of us will feel remorse. A lot of us will feel disappointment. But there's all these feelings that come in. And if we don't take the time to forgive ourselves, then we're going to stay stuck in yesterday. So what you have to do is you have to own what you did and own it outright. And then you need to go ahead and forgive yourself. And that process of forgiving is really, really important, because if we don't forgive it, then we're going to kind of be stuck in this whole mindset of us not passing, us not making it. And, failure in a general sense is not a bad thing. We need that in aspects of our lives if we're going to get stronger and better. You know that for muscle building, you know that for running, you know that for most things in life. If you don't have a couple of failures, you're probably not really trying. So don't worry. Don't look at this as a bad thing. Look at this as an opportunity to improve yourself. This is an opportunity to get better and stronger when we get into the process of tomorrow and building ourselves to be that way. But let's get past it today. Forgive yourself, and then let's move on. So the next one is the recommit. Now, when you first started this journey, particularly if you started it with me, I'm a big proponent of commitment. That commitment is really the driving force that's going to make you successful in your health and fitness journey. And if you're not committed to it, then these cycles of failure are going to keep happening to you because you're not looking at it from the bigger picture. You're not really involved emotionally in winning this. So the commitment basically comes down to your why. And I've shared with you before that my why is my family and wanting to be, in really good health in my older years so I can spend that time with my family and doing the things that we enjoy. Your vision then is what does that person look like that's older than you? When you get, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years down the line, how are you going to look and feel? What's your vision of health and fitness at that point, at each of those points? And that kind of gives you this overall view of what you're committing to. Just like when you're going to get married, you're committing to an individual. You guys have plans for the future. At that point, generally what you both are aspiring to have as a life, and you want to do it together. So you have your why, which is the love you have for each other, and you have your vision, is what you plan your future life to look like. So that's the basic function of that commitment, and it works the same way for health and fitness. So now it's time for you to go back and reconnect with your why and re-envision your vision. Now, things may have changed since the last time you did this exercise, and that's fine. But it's time to get back to a commitment. It's time to make that happen for yourself. So your today is all about recommitting. So we've forgiven ourselves, we owned it, and we forgave ourselves. Now we're going to go in and we're going to recommit to this new path. We're going to start the trajectory upward. So now we're ready for tomorrow. And tomorrow basically has two different phases. The first phase is where we're going to sit down and kind of go through and plan out, understand why this happened. So we're going to do a thing called root cause analysis. And one of the easiest ways to get to root cause is to ask the question, why? And we're not just going to ask the question why once, because one why doesn't typically get to the root cause. Okay? So you really have to drill down and drill down. So the question is, why did I overindulge in the chocolate? And it was there, it was available, it was easy. Okay. Why was it easy? Well, someone else brought it in there And it made it easy for me to get to. It's like, okay, if it had not been easy, would you have done it again? So why did you feel like just because it was there, you needed to do it? And the thing is, well, I was too tempting. It was really just, okay, so you were in a moment of weakness. Why were you in a moment of weakness? Well, I'm going through this emotional thing. Okay, now we've got to the root cause. So there was an emotional root cause, emotional event was going on in your life. You were stressed. And you went to chocolate as the answer in that moment. Okay. So now that we kind of have this trigger, we know what the trigger is. The trigger is emotional times. So if we're in an emotional time, maybe we try to avoid events that are going to put us in that weakness, or we go ahead and implement a habit that is a healthier habit for when we find ourselves in those moments. So maybe if we found that we also get a really good feeling if we go for a good brisk walk. It kind of relaxes our mind. It gets us past some of those emotions. For me, it's throwing around heavy weights. If I get frustrated and stressed at work, I need to go in the gym and I need to move some weights. And that exertion and that effort and getting it all out on the weights helps me get past that moment. So I don't find myself then saying, okay, after work, I'm going to go have a few drinks to, maybe a couple glasses of wine, and it turns into 3 or 4 glasses of wine as I kind of still ruminate on that stress event. So building a habit after you know the root cause. So the trigger was emotional distress, or in my case, stress. And the habit is what it is. And you're either going to turn to a bad habit or you're going to turn to a good habit. And as they go forward, we want to more and more interject that we want to go for the good habit. So find yourself stressed out, go for that long, brisk walk. Find yourself stressed out, go in the gym and go hit the weights. And we need to do that almost automatically. And that's where the core of habit comes in, is that habit is something that we just automatically do. So if you get frustrated, that's just what you do. And we want to get to that point where we're doing the better things before we find ourselves doing the poor habits. Now, a couple of things that will help, and I'll give you a couple of tools that you can consider that will kind of pull this all together, and then I'll do a quick little recap. Okay, I think journaling is extremely important, particularly when you're trying to learn something about yourself. You're trying to figure out these root causes. If you're trying to build a habit, if you're trying to sustain something, taking the time to journal how you feel, what's going on, what foods you ate, when you ate them, how you felt after, how you slept, all those pieces of information and data are great things for you to go over and get an understanding. And it's like, I had an interview just the other day with a guy named Guianet, and he's big on the sleep thing, like a lot of health folks are now that are getting this health books. But his big deal was they actually have science studies that show if you're not getting enough sleep, you tend to make poorer food choices and health choices, even in light of knowing what's what. And so maybe your root cause is a lack of sleep. And if you were tracking your sleep and realized, hey, I'm really only getting 4 hours of good sleep every night, maybe that's not enough. Maybe that's why I'm making these choices I'm making. So maybe my root cause is actually not all the stress and other stuff. Maybe my root cause is my sleep. And maybe if I work on improving my sleep, that will actually make this an easier process to get through. So I think journaling is extremely important to get a good understanding of yourself and know what's what. The second tool I'd like you to consider is meditation. And the reason I think meditation can be valuable here is that with meditation, you're trying to get into a practice of not thinking, but recognizing thoughts and feelings and being able to kind of distance yourself from them slightly so you can observe them in a very different way. When we're in the heat of the moment, it's often very, very difficult for us to understand what that means in the grand scheme of things. And I'll tell you a story. We bought a condo where I was hoping to retire on Pensacola Beach. And we really do love the place. But there's another individual, and he happens to be on the HOA board as I am. And he and his wife just don't like the fact that we have big dogs in the condo. And so they have put forward a motion with the board to disallow our pets, because they made it very, very clear it was large dogs of certain breeds, which they identify ours. And when they first did this, I was quite angry. I put together a plan for communication through the board meeting. We were planning all this, but I was, obviously going to be overwhelmed because they had already planned all of this out in a way that I couldn't really change anything. Now, through my meditation, one of the things that I've come to realize is that it's very easy for me to kind of let things like this fester and for me to get extremely angry over time and let it get to just worse and worse and worse and not really ever get to a good resolution. So what I've just decided is, fine, I'll sell the condo and I'll buy another one. So there is a cost to me, a financial cost that when I do the buy and the sale, I'm going to have to incur. So I understand that I'm making a decision that is not necessarily the most best financial decision I could make, but it is a decision that will reduce the stress and anxiety. And if I were planning to actually retire to this place, those individuals would remain in my life. They would still be owners and people who I was regularly seeing in that condo. So I would never truly escape the anger and stress of that because this is just one event and there have been others and there will be others. So it will get down to a point where they would actually make living there unpleasant. They would make it stressful. They would not make it what I want it to be when I actually do retire. So they took away that and they helped me actually see. So I'm actually a little bit thankful that this came out now because it's at a moment where I can actually act on it in an appropriate way and get out of it. And so I actually am going to move forward on this. So I forgive what they've done. I'm just moving on. I own the fact that, yeah, we have big dogs and they don't like it and they don't like a lot of things about us. So this just isn't the right place for us. So when I think about what my vision was for this life down there, it was to have a stress-free environment where I could enjoy myself, my family, my friends, and all the things that I've talked about in my health vision. That was my retirement vision, and they aligned very, very well, which is exactly how it should work. So that recommitment just means that I need to now get to another point. And the root cause is that my needs do not align with their needs, and we're both in the same location, in the same condo set. So it's just not going to work for me. So we're going to move on, and there'll be a lot less stress in our lives. There'll be a lot more of what we want in our lives. And so I know that's not a health and fitness story per se, but I'm hoping that you can take that story and understand that through meditation, I was able to kind of put those pieces together relatively quickly because I could distance myself from the emotion and the feelings and all the resentment, all the things that were going on. And I can say, okay, what can I solve and what can I not solve? And I know you've probably read this or heard the Serenity Prayer. I won't say it over, but I knew what I could control and I knew what I couldn't. And I couldn't control them being there, and they were always going to be there. So it was time for me to do something else. And if I had not, I don't think if I had taken the journey of understanding myself as well as I do, that I would have been able to make that decision as quickly. And we would have probably suffered again and again before it really would have settled in that there was no winning as far as this was concerned. And so the winning is changing my direction. It's changed my path. It's doing something slightly different. So to do a quick little recap, the approach that I propose when you slip and you want to get back on track is to use the yesterday, today, and tomorrow paradigm. And in that, you have to own what you did and forgive yourself. You have to recommit to the direction that you want to go, which might even be slightly different than the one it was before. And then you need to plan. And as you go through tomorrow, you need to know kind of what the root cause was, or at least try to know what the root cause was so you can be doing something positive to address that root cause. And then next, you need to start really trying to understand your habits, what the triggers are, and why you're doing what you're doing. And the more time you spend doing those two things going forward, the more likely you are to stay on track and be successful. So, as tools, I believe journaling and meditation are two awesome tools to help you get back on track and stay on track because they're both great tools to help you understand yourself better, understand your emotions and feelings better. And knowing yourself better is going to give you a lot more direction if you slip again, and you may, but just recognize that the more time you spend understanding yourself, the better off you're going to be when that time comes around. I hope you got something good out of today's show. I know I enjoyed the process of answering Donna's question. It really kind of helped me reconnect with my framework of the way that I want to deal with my life and, the occasional slip ups and things that I have that get in the way. It really kind of helped me just kind of redefine the path forward and make sure that I have the right tools in place to be successful. So, Donna, thank you so much for that question. And if you have a question for the podcast, feel free to reach out to me at 40plusfitnesspodcast@gmail.com. That's 40plusfitnesspodcast@gmail. And just send me your questions. I answer every one of them, both through the email and then some of them, if they're good topics for a podcast, then I definitely try to bring them out here. If there's any podcast episodes you are interested in, any struggles you're going through, anything that's going on that you need a little bit of guidance or assistance or just, someone to listen and bounce things off of, feel free to send me an email. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Gary Taubes and discuss his book, The Case Against Sugar. This is a can't miss interview. Gary Taubes is one of the top writers on the topic of obesity and sugar and disease. And really, this is one of the best episodes we've had so far. So please do come back next week. And that's going to be episode 224. I look forward to seeing you then. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.